Good everyone, in this video today we have a review on the Hornet Mk.III, and I know a certain someone's eagerly awaiting this. That being flight, because at first I didn't actually like this aircraft all that much, and well, I'm still not a huge fan of it, although I respect what it needs to do now. However, the problem is with the Hornet is that it's a one-trick pony, which is a shame because this thing is incredibly powerful at what it can do. So the Hornet Mk.III is essentially a improvement on the Mosquito. Well, in some ways it's an improvement, in some ways it's a downgrade. The Hornet has improved engine output, improved high altitude performance, and most importantly, improved armament, although you do lose the 7.7s, which, to be honest, if you're relying on 7.7s, I would honestly recommend that you, well, just unbind them, to be honest, and just save them for ground targets. That's probably what I'm going to try at one point. Take out the Mosquito Mk.6 and see how that works. But the Hornet seems to have very good performance at pretty much any altitude you put it at. The problem is with that is that as I mentioned, it's a one-trick pony. And why is it a one-trick pony? The problem is with the Hornet is that it has two syndromes with it. It has J5N1 syndrome, where it wobbles sometimes in a turn, and it also has P38K syndrome, where it can only do one thing, and that's climb. It doesn't come down very well, it doesn't handle particularly great, and the flaps snap the second you touch them above 250 miles an hour on combat, so you can't really utilize the flaps in a turn. Which, to be honest, this thing is very unmaneuverable. I would actually describe the Tempest as being more maneuverable than this aircraft. Now, I have seen morons strap up this thing with crap such as bombs and rockets, and that just makes the problem even worse, so don't do that. The wings are very fragile from what I've been noticing, and the aircraft itself really can't take a hit, especially, as I mentioned, on the wing surface. The problem is with the Hornet is that if you're solo, like if you're a solo player, this aircraft don't work. It simply doesn't. And even though this aircraft has a reputation of pretty much being uncatchable, I've always been caught up in this thing, even when I was spaded. I've been caught up by Doras when I shouldn't be. I've been caught up by 109K4s when I shouldn't be. And I really don't think this aircraft deserves the reputation of being an uncatchable beast like it is. I honestly don't think it should. And that's the problem with it. It relies on its reputation. It's a bit like the KV2. That the KV2 relies on that 152mm howitzer, and if it can't pen what it sees, it's screwed because everyone knows where to kill it, and everything at the tier that the KV2 can fight can kill it. Same goes for the Hornet. Everything can take on a Hornet, and the pilot of the Hornet doesn't know what he's doing. It's especially vulnerable. And at least in my experience, I've been caught up on several occasions where I should not have been. And that, to me, is what ruined the Hornet for me. Now, as I mentioned, you can strap up this thing with bombs and rockets. However, I do not recommend this. This thing really does weigh down because of the weight. You can strap it to 8 rockets, 2 1,000-pound bombs, and 4 rockets, or just 2 1,000-pound bombs on its own. But the thing is that this thing's not really meant to do that, so don't strap this thing up with crap. It just makes the handling even worse. And as you're going to see in this battle, it's very hard to pull a slashing attack off on a 288, to the point where I even lose an engine doing it. Because the simple fact of the matter is the elevator has a very poor response, the rudder is very poorly to respond, the roll rate is certainly lacking, and the guns are debatable at best, being Mark V Hispano. Now you can run ground targets to relegate this issue, as with most British aircraft that have 20mm Hispano, but to me, I don't think this aircraft's very good. It's a one-trick pony, and that's the problem with it. It's not versatile in the slightest. It cannot do more than one thing. The only thing it can do is push enemies down, which it can do very well. A lot of people seem to still fear this aircraft, but that still don't mean I'm going to give this thing a good review. So those of you who like the Hornet, I'm sorry, but I think this thing's a pile of crap. Because without being in the squad, this thing is a pile of crap. With the way allied teams have been recently, this thing just can't do its job very well. And as I mentioned, the Hornet is incredibly good at doing the job of pushing enemies down. But what's the point when you don't have a team to push them down to? And it's only a matter of time before you'll either run out of fuel, you'll take a hit and lose an engine or coolant, and it's only a matter of time before the enemies will catch up to you. And if you're fighting TARs, it's going to be incredibly hard. So, all I'm saying is, I wouldn't fly this thing alone. I would fly this thing in a squad, because that's your only hope of flying this aircraft and spading it. I wish I'd have done it in a squad, because most of the time I wasn't in a squad, and to be brutally honest, I wish I did. So let's get into how I did in terms of my profile and everything and how I did. I personally don't like this aircraft, so I didn't really care. 5 deaths, 73% win rate, 22 kills, and 65 ground units. I just use the spawners against ground targets because, well, why the hell not? There was one match where I think I racked up like 20 ground units because, well, there was nothing else for me to shoot really. But I nearly did get at least an ace on one occasion. However, as usual, the aircraft ruined it because, well, its handling is just that bad. I couldn't get the shot off. The guy got the shot off on me when I should have had a shot on him earlier. And had I been in the squad, I could have won that battle, but we didn't because this aircraft handled so poorly. Let's get into the battle anyway, and I'll show you exactly what this thing is like to fly. It really is a brick. It's like the P-38K as I mentioned. I cannot recommend the P-38K. If you need a P-38, well, if you like the P-38s and you want a premium, just slap a talisman on the L. The L will do you so much better. Same goes for the Hornet. If you need something at 5.7 that can do this things, or that can do what the Hornet can do, obviously not push down, but can at least do a comparable performance output of what the Hornet can do, well, here's my answer. Slap a talisman on a Griffin Spit, or something like the Tempest Mark.II, or even the Mark.V. Because at least that way, the Tempest can outrun anything it sees on the deck, and to me, I had more fun spading the Tempest once I learned how to fly it. The Tempest can do more things than this can. Now, don't get me wrong, the climb rate on this aircraft is incredible. As you're going to notice, as I just plonk into 4 times speed just to get this thing along, because it does take me about 5 minutes to get to the battle and able to actually get involved. Because, well, I climb to ridiculous altitude, which is what this thing's meant to do, and I begin pushing the enemies down. Now, one thing you'll notice is that there's a guy on the enemy team called the Saints147. I think he's been learning from Harry because he's in a Jaffa Wolf in a 6-7 game, which he's actually going to do pretty okay for himself. Let's put it that way. But as you can tell, the climb rate is incredible when you get it spaded. That I do have to give the Hornet credit for. It really does want to climb. The problem is with that, is that to me, I didn't enjoy it. And at this altitude where we're at right now, 22,000 feet, this thing handles like a dog. I've had better handling in the B-24. But as you can tell, the friendly in the B-29 over there just got gangbanged by 3 German aircraft, 2 TARs and 335. Kind of feel bad for him, but, well, he didn't really bother to climb, so it just went from there. So now we're hitting an altitude of 26,000 feet, which in meters I think is about 8,500 meters, something like that. And as you can tell, this thing really doesn't want to maneuver. The elevator is very poor at this altitude, and that's putting that lightly. The rudder is even worse up here, and the aileron response, as you can tell, is diabolically bad. At least for the P-38K, you at least get a decent roll rate from what I've seen, but not this thing. And that TAR over there is a H, which is going to be even more of a trouble for me. And don't get me wrong, once you get this thing up there, it's got incredible performance, but look at the way it's turning. This is maximum turn at this altitude. And that's maximum roll. It just doesn't want to maneuver. And I've got a friendly down there in a Hornet, and I'm not going to be able to save him because of how crap this thing handles. I can't save that Hornet. I can at least back him up, but as you're going to notice, this thing just really doesn't want to do anything other than climb. So at this point, I pitched down to try and at least get on the tail of the 152. To at least either to get him to break off the Hornet, or at least engage me instead. And this turned out to be a good decision, because the burst I'm about to put into him in a moment is one that's actually going to cause him some problems later down the line. Any second now. Once the shells actually decide to do damage, that's the shot. That shot there on Dark Halo has basically put his engine on a ticking time bomb, and, well, he's a greedy little shit, so he's going to learn that, well, he should have just ran when he had the chance. I mean, he was dragging us low for his team, which is really the only thing he can do, and as you've noticed, look over there, Kika coming in, and a TAR 152, I think he's a H as well. The Kika is probably one of the most annoying vehicles to fight in this aircraft, but it's certainly doable. You just have to make sure that the Kika fucks up first, because that's really the only way you're killing it. But with the TARs, you at least hold some cards against the TAR. You at least climb better than the TAR, and you can at least make them stall out quicker, because, well, this thing has more power than the TAR, and I've been able to stall out TARs for this thing, so it is doable. But obviously at this point I was deciding what to do. Should I go and engage the Kika? So I just caught my microphone control thing there with my foot. That's probably why you heard like a clang. That was my foot slipping, but don't worry about that. I was debating to back him up with the TAR or go for the jet and the other TAR, which are, well, I don't know how they're damaged. And here comes the Japper Wolf to come and lend a hand. And this is where it's going to get even worse in terms of the handling department. At high speed, this thing might as well be at 26,000 feet, because of how well this thing handles. It can still pull out the dives better, but even so. So obviously it's two Hornets versus a TA-152H, which is already damaged, and a Japper Wolf. This is going to take a while, and there goes the other Hornet. He couldn't dodge the 190. He couldn't turn with the 190. He was finished. There wasn't a lot he could do. So obviously I know the TAR is damaged, so I thought I'll go for the Japper Wolf since he's undamaged. And later on we're actually going to finish off that TAR, but for now I wanted to focus the Japper Wolf. And at this point I can hear a jet coming in. And I was wondering, is that the Kika? Because I was getting very concerned, but don't worry, the Kika's not here yet, thankfully. But obviously the Japper Wolf attempts to turn, and I managed to get a shot into the cockpit, which manages to take out the pilot of the 190. But obviously at this point, the TAR's coming back, and well, he's on his last legs. That engine is really giving out at this point. The damage that I did earlier really did do some good damage to his aircraft. But I'm saying to the... I think I said to I think I said to the Hornet in chat or something. I did say at the start because the team was chasing 288s, but even so. The Kika and the Corsair actually just rammed each other, so we don't have to worry about them for the moment. But obviously at this point, the TAR is attempting to climb up towards me. But obviously, as you can tell, he's got a lot on his plate. He's got a Swedish jet coming after him, and his engine's still pouring oil. Now obviously the jet will not be able to take him 1 versus 1 unless the jet actually keeps the speed up, which this jet isn't really doing that good of a job of, but he's still able to at least keep some distance from the TAR. Now we still do have a 335B2 and a K4 as well as a 288 left. However, the jet makes the fatal mistake of trying to turn towards the TAR, but obviously he doesn't have the speed and he smacks it into a tree. And at this point the P-47 decides, yeah, I'm going to take a head on with the TAR, and almost gets bitch slapped. The tower turns towards me. I'm trying to get a shot here at 450 miles an hour. I'm just able to do it with the rudder, which the rudder is probably the best control surface on this aircraft, and that's kill number 2. That just gives you an idea of how poor the response is of the aircraft if I have to rely on the rudder, because the rudder's better. Yeah, you can now see why I don't like this thing. Honestly, I swear, in a game like Grand Theft Auto, I've driven trucks that have better handling. Like, seriously. This thing just doesn't have the capability of doing anything other than going up to altitude and hoping that an enemy is dumb enough to get slow enough so that you can actually bitch slap them with a rudder. So at this point, it's down to a K4, a 335B2, and a 288. And obviously, I'd spotted the 288 previously, and I wasn't too concerned about him, but then I thought, I'll go for the 288. It turned out the other dot I saw to the right was the K4, at least if I remember. Oh, no, the K4 just ripped his wings off there. But as you can tell, I'm coming in on the 288, and I'm pretty certain he knows how shit this thing's handling is. He just has to brake hard right, and I actually fat-fingered the flap key there. And look at the control surfaces, they just don't want to work. So obviously I'm trying to dodge his defensive fire, but before I continue, I'm just going to describe what I tend to do against this sort of bomber. Against the 288, I attempt to slash attack them, which is where I come in from either the left or the right hand side of the aircraft. I perform a slashing attack, so that way I've got minimal time in their gun sight. That's what I tried to do here in the Hornet. However, it don't work in the Hornet. And I knew that I'd have to tail sit him. Which, it did cost me an engine, but at least I was able to control the aircraft with just one engine. And there goes the left-hand engine. But you're unable to do basic bomber engaging tactics in the Hornet unless you leave yourself a lot more room. That's disappointing. But overall, I would not fly the Hornet. I would rather slap a talisman on one of the Griffins, or the Tempest Mk.II or Mk.V. Or maybe even a talisman on the Brigand would probably be better, as well as the Aleph Mk.IX Spitfire. I think those are better overall. I think those are preferred, and most importantly, I would rather fly those than this thing. Let's put it that way. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's review on the Hornet Mk.III, and well, I'll see you all on the next one.